Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Stefan Livera podcast, brought to you by Bold, where you can buy and store and sell your Bitcoin for American listeners over at getbold.io. Joining me today is Roman, Martinez, and Lexi. Now, Roman is also known as Chimbera in the Bitcoin community, but Roman and Lexi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And so, as I understand, you guys are, working on El Salvador real estate, and I guess helping people who are either new to the country or maybe returning expats who want to buy real estate. So, do you want to just give us a quick 1 minute overview? What are you guys doing over at Goodlife Real Estate?
Sure, I can give you a background. So we started the real estate company over 3 years ago. Obviously, we saw a lot of interest in El Salvador at that point. We're seeing even more interest now. We offer the company is Goodlife El Salvador, and we offer traditional real estate services. We are a traditional brokerage, but we've also developed a lot of services for people who are El Salvador curious. The market in El Salvador, the real estate market, is not very straightforward, especially when you compare it to the US or Canada. And so, we think it's really important that you're working with people that you can trust and really understand what's happening on the ground here. So, yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Fantastic. And just for listeners who are, have not been to El Salvador recently, right? Like now, as last time I was there was, I believe, November 2022, right? For adopting Bitcoin back in 22. I missed it last year. I'm sure there's been a lot of development since. So can you guys tell us a little bit about how things have changed over the last year or so?
Go, yeah, go
Sure.
ahead, Lex.
You want me to start? Okay.
Yeah,
I guess you can add on to anything I say. I mean, since 2022, a lot has changed. Also, a lot has remained the same. I mean, it's still a really wonderful country. The people here are extremely welcoming. But as far as changes that we've seen, improvements in infrastructure, development projects, we've seen a lot of government regulations that are very supportive of businesses coming here. There's a zero tax law for tech companies. There's incentives for taller buildings, in San Salvador. So we're seeing a lot of improvements and a lot of excitement, and I think it's only still just the beginning.
yeah, and adding something to that, Stefan, is like in the last 2 years, what we have been seeing also is like more Bitcoiners, more people like are interesting to come and check El Salvador to visit for the first time. A lot of people have been making El Salvador their plan B, uh, also diversifying a little bit their investments, and also we're seeing like families, individuals just not coming in vacation, but coming to live here. And I think that had been so amazing seeing in the last 3 years. Last September, we were celebrating the third anniversary that Bitcoin as a legal tender here in El Salvador, and it had been a non-stop. The number of people showing up, some moving here, someone that want investing here, companies moving here, like Lexi say. But this is it's amazing. It's a non-stop.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the kinds of people who are moving there, right? I presume there's some expats. I presume there's some, let's say, Salvadoran diaspora who are around the world and now they're coming back. And I guess maybe tourists who came there and then they decided, yeah, they want to buy a place there or something. So do you want to just give us some ideas on who are the typical profiles of customers you're dealing with there?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of a mix of everything that you just mentioned. We certainly have people from all around the globe. That is one thing that I'm constantly like, I don't know, excited by and sometimes surprised by. We have clients from New Zealand, from Australia, from Europe, from the US, from Canada, from really all over the world. And a lot of them are looking for, like Chimbera said, plan B, or to relocate their family. Definitely Bitcoiners, a lot of investors that are now coming here and seeing a lot of potential in the country. Entrepreneurs, and like you said, the diaspora, the Salvadoran diaspora, a lot of them moving back to El Salvador, and looking for either a vacation home or to permanently relocate back to El Salvador.
Yeah. And so I'm curious if you had to, let's try to break that down in terms of motivation, right? Because there's different motivations, right? Some people could be looking at it from an investment perspective, and that could be they're looking at capital appreciation, or they might be thinking rental income. There could be people like Chimbera mentioned, like a plan B, right? It's a strategic reason. You're thinking, I want to have a plan B location. And then otherwise, people who actually, it's their plan A. They want to go and live there as their primary home. So what would you say are the main motivations of people? Like, as an example, there might be people who are moving for more safety, or what would you say are what's the driver for them?
Um, I would say a majority of the calls that I have with clients are about are people that are a little bit scared about what's happening in their home countries. To be honest, they're
Yeah.
looking for a plan B, so that could turn into a plan A for them. So that's one major reason, and one consistency through most, one consistent point that I find through most of the clients that we have interested in investing here. It's more for safety, for security, if things go off the rails, as a lot of people think they are in the U.S. or Canada or Europe, then they have a place that they can come and they can live and they can take care of their family. We definitely have, I would say, like the second reason would be for investment purposes, right? Like a place that they can have as a vacation home, but that they can also rent and generate rental income when they're not using it. So to come enjoy El Salvador, but also, yeah, of course, make money with their real estate investment. I don't know,
Yeah,
Chimber, if you have any other points to add to that.
yeah, something. Probably this is more from the Bitcoiners perspective. Like a lot of people want to be part of what El Salvador is doing, you know? Like very often I sit with people that say, I don't need to do it. I don't need to buy a house here. I don't need to do an investment here, but I want to do it because it's in my way. It's my way to support what the government is doing, what El Salvador is doing. El Salvador is the first Bitcoin country, and I think that is um, a dream for many people, right, Steph? Like you have been a Bitcoiner for many years, and I think like how many people we know around the globe that we're dreaming that one day there will be the first Bitcoin country where you can come and live in a Bitcoin standard, where Bitcoin is a legal tender, where there are no capital gains in Bitcoin, and that is one of the main reasons that El Salvador is attracting so many people from all over the world coming here and buying a house with Bitcoin. You know, that you don't need to go from Bitcoin to dollars and then making a real estate investment, and the real estate investment have property taxes. It came with responsibilities. That's another reason that El Salvador also don't have property taxes. You know, a lot of people that are real estate investors in USA, Canada, like if you see how much property taxes they pay in California, it's crazy, right? When they come in here and they say, no property taxes in El Salvador. Wow, that's amazing. Also, El Salvador is one of the country that foreign people can own properties. You know, that means the name, the title, your name is in the title of the property. So in many countries like Mexico, even Guatemala, Costa Rica, some places, I guess Nicaragua, you just do this big leasing for 100 years, and but you never owns the property. So, and also I one of the reason that a lot of clients of us end in buying properties here is because this is, I think, is more from the human perspective, that you want to wake up in a place that you're exciting for the future, that you see a future. You're like, you wake up every day and you're like, wow, this is another day. I'm exciting. I'm building this. And like Lexi say, most of the clients that are coming from Europe, United States, Canada, they're like, well, I have real estate in Canada, but pay property taxes. I'm not excited for the future. So I'm willing now to liquidate some assets there and putting here in El Salvador in a new market, because a lot of these people, the reality is that are used to investing in early stage like companies, and many of these people approach El Salvador as a startups, as a early stage startups, and they see great potential and great opportunities to grow.
Yeah. Now, Chimbero, you mentioned the legal tender aspect, so I think it would be great if you could give an update for listeners as well on, there's been a lot of back and forth on where can you actually spend your Bitcoin, right? So I guess people have said, okay, if you're in El Zonte, maybe parts of San Salvador, and is it Berlin, El Salvador, which is another well-known community. But I've heard some people say, inside the country, Bitcoin is sort of seen as, oh, that's tourist money, or it's kind of for the rich, wealth, outsiders. I'm curious your perspective. Is that true or not? Or, what's the on the ground reality for people?
No, that's a good question, because I think Bitcoin adoption is moving forward, definitely. But sometimes people want things happen really quickly, and education took time, and one of the reason is because we are learning in different ways. It took time. I tell people, when people complain about the Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador, and say like, it could just become a legal tender 3 years ago. And I asked the question, like, when was the first time you hear for the first time about Bitcoin? And everyone's like, oh, 5 years. And how long it passed until you really get it and you really get into Bitcoin? And for a few people are like, oh, I hear about Bitcoin today and I'm buying Bitcoin tomorrow. It's like, for most of the Bitcoiner, it's a path that they have been doing, and most of the people say, I hear about Bitcoin 2012, 2013, but I buy Bitcoin in 2017, so it took 5 years, 6 years. So I think for El Salvador is the same, and a good thing is that there are like now there are more organizations that we are focused on Bitcoin education, helping the Bitcoin education in the country, like My First Bitcoin, Plan B, Cubo Plus, No Nation, Bitcoin Beach, Lina is also helping with education. Like, there are so many players like trying to help with the Bitcoin education. Just mention it, like a project that I don't know if you hear on Twitter, but we were posting that last year we did a pilot with the Minister of Education. My First Bitcoin and Bitcoin Beach, we're partnering with the Minister of Education to training public teachers from the public schools. And we're training around 150 teachers last year. And these 150 teachers went back to their school and they were training the students in their school. So they're training around 2,500 students. And this year, we're training around 400 teachers. And these 400 teachers, and in training this year around 7,000 students from the public schools, So we were having this meeting like last week with Stacy and the Minister of Education, showing them the numbers, making the plan for the next year. And, when people say, tell me another country that the Minister of Education is sitting, like hearing from Bitcoiners trying to make the plan for planning Bitcoin education for the next year in the public school. No country is doing this, But of course, one of the things that is happening is that places like El Zonte that you mentioned, like Bitcoin Beach, like Berlin in the mountains, like Punta Mango, like the Bitcoin Island in La Piraya, are working because there are tourism. And it's really important what is happening with Bitcoin tourism, people showing from all over the world that want to pay in Bitcoin. And that is amazing. And it's kind of one of the way that the countries having Bitcoin incomes, So, and it's one of the reasons why in places that there is not Bitcoin tourists yet, people don't see benefit yet, from Bitcoin. But it's just a matter of time, And I can tell you, we had people here that living in a Bitcoin standard, that earning Bitcoin, that spending Bitcoin, that saving Bitcoin. You can do it, We personally, we pay most of the things with Bitcoin, salaries, bills, food, service, whatever you can imagine. If you want to live paying everything with Bitcoin, it's possible, you know?
Yeah, and I mean that's great. Like I think that's really the dream for a lot of hardcore long-time Bitcoiners to be able to earn and spend everything in Bitcoin. Obviously, depending on where you live, that's not always possible. But in El Salvador, I think it's pretty good to hear that. I'm curious then on the property investment side. Are you seeing a lot of your customers who actually want to live in, let's say, in those Bitcoin hubs, or maybe they're buying property a little bit outside of those hubs? I'm curious. What are you seeing?
I think definitely like a lot of people have been attracting for Bitcoin Beach. Like Bitcoin Beach have been coming. It's the ground zero. I think this place will go down in history as the ground zero for Bitcoin circle economies, for showing and paid away in many ways, right? So Bitcoin Beach have been becoming that place because it's on the beach, it's really close to the airport, it's really close to the city. But of course, Bitcoin Beach have been becoming like also the most expensive place to buy real estate. And I think that opened the places to like a lot of people now like are living in Berlin that is more less expensive even to find rentals, for Bitcoiners, that are trying to make their way. It's just depending. Like we have different peoples like coming to El Salvador, people like there are like in different stage of life, successful entrepreneurials that are retired that want to have a house and Bitcoin Beach, beachfront, living the life. And we also have people that are coming to El Salvador that are still working, they're working remote, that still staking sat. And for them, it doesn't make sense to make a big investment in real estate. But of course, they want to live in a place like Berlin where the rent is more cheaper, or San Salvador, or some other areas that now are getting like traction. And one of the things that I tell people is that El Salvador is really small, right, Stefan? Like for us living 10, 15 minutes from the beach now, it seems so far. But for most of the people living 1 hour away from the beach is close. And
They're happy to just do a drive if they want to go to the beach.
exactly. And that's what's happening now. And a lot of people that come and say like, I love El Salvador, but the beach is super hot for me. I want more cooler, a cooler weather. So we have one time, we have like places like 35 minutes away from Bitcoin Beach, 1 hour away from the beach. There are like higher elevation, 1,500 meters above the sea, 2,000 meters above the sea, where at night it's cooler. Probably you don't need AC. So, and it's more cheaper. So I think El Salvador is getting like all type of people. So I don't know, Lexi, what you see it like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that El Salvador is attracting a lot of Bitcoiners, and of course, they want to live where they can use their Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is a part of their everyday. But I think also, when you think about relocating to a place, you also have lifestyle needs and wants and that are not related to Bitcoin necessarily. Like
Yeah,
do you want to live in a warm place or a cool place, or do you want a lot of privacy, or do you want to live in a place where there's a lot going on socially? So those are all of the things that really come into play aside from just Bitcoin. And those are the questions that we really make sure to ask our clients, because they our clients come and they're interested in El Salvador. But again, we have to ask them, like, what kind of living environment do you want? That's super important.
and also just adding something really quickly because I think it's important is like what Lexi say. Everyone have a different need. Everyone want accomplishing different things here in El Salvador, and is like we have families. If you come with kids and you want your kids go to the school, definitely you want to be more close to the city. Because the education is there. I will say the healthcare is there. Like now, the San Salvador is like everything that you need is there. Also from the business perspective, like meetings, lawyers, like architects, like everything is there. So it's based on that need that we advise people. Like if we understanding like what that means for you investing here, we're suggesting, like this could be the best place for you to live. But then if you only want to do an investment, that's another thing, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. So while we're talking about location and where people are doing things and how people are doing things from a real estate perspective, um, can you guys offer any comment on whether people are coming in and they're looking for, a ready-made place, or they're looking for maybe to, let's say, buy and renovate, or maybe they're looking to buy a plot of land and build a house there? What are some of your, I guess, thoughts and what are you seeing people do?
I can answer this one, Chimbera. Again, we're seeing a mix of all of those things, Stefan. Like we see
Yeah.
people with different needs when it comes to like exactly what they want to invest in. I would say one thing to understand is that the momentum and the excitement for El Salvador is doesn't necessarily match the inventory that we have in the country.
Right.
Like supply doesn't necessarily meet demand. So now we're seeing
Mhm.
a lot of like pre-construction projects, which are really exciting to people, especially Bitcoiners that are on a certain have a certain payment schedule in mind. But yeah, uh, I think right now El Salvador is catching up with the demand. And a lot of people would like to come and have a turnkey solution for sure. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Or you buy a unit in a condominium development where when you're not here, you're not going to have to deal with all of the maintenance that a single family home would require in like a gated community. And so again, it comes down to like what are their needs. We have people coming for everything, and I think there is something for everyone, but there is we're going through this growth spurt in El Salvador, so it also requires people to understand like what's a reality of what they can find right now.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of, going to El Salvador, setting up, I'm curious if you guys have any tips on, what are some common pitfalls or, gringo traps or whatever we're calling them. What are some common things that people come and they don't quite understand how it works there?
No, that's real estate here in El Salvador is quite different, like it's like how you say in some ways the Wild West. How you pronounce that, Alex?
The wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like they're not like people tending to say that real estate is not like that you don't need a license to be a realtor. So kind of everyone can be a realtor, but if you want to work in real estate, you need to have a company. Like we have a real estate company that we pay taxes, we're regulator, we offering service, we do facturas, but a lot of people, Mike used to touch this, like Mike Peterson, he give this advice to people like, yeah, real estate in El Salvador, like a lot of people thinking that they can do it in their own, that they can come and find your place, find your land, and you can do it, definitely. But you are exposed. What we have been seeing is that, well, first, why we ending building Goodlife, it was because for me being one of the co-founder of Bitcoin Beach, like a lot of people start asking me like for a lot of help, like, oh, I want to buy a house, I want to invest in land, can you help me? And I start helping friends, and but what I start seeing is that a lot of people start taking advantage of, selling the properties with over prices. That was one really common thing, and also a few friends of mine happened that they get scammed, that they end up buying a property. The seller didn't have the right documents, the titles, or they say they have a POA from the real owner, and they end up buying the property. And then there is a big problem to trying to get your money back, So I think those come to my mind, that real estate is about trust, and for me, I approach real estate in the way that I approach Bitcoin. We as a Bitcoiner, realtors are third part, right? Like, and Bitcoiners hate third parts, but and and it's the reality, But you gotta add value to the equation, When you add value to the equation, I think everyone don't really. I don't care to pay, but if I'm getting value from this service, and this is where we advise people, working with someone that you trust. The prices in El Salvador are, there is the expectation price, on what El Salvador is doing, what El Salvador will do. And then there is the market price, And most of the properties, a lot of people are trying to get this expectation price, the price based on the expectation, And you see like properties that are are asking like $1 million for a vacant lot in one area that I know how much they pay like 2 years ago, and if you don't have someone that advises you on those on the price, it's easier to convince someone and say, "Oh no, that's a good price. You should pay it because in 5 years that land will work more." But for me, real estate works like, I know if in 5 years it will work more, I want that appreciation and land, and I'm buying now, So I think that's one of the most common thing that I see. Like,
Just people overpaying for real estate, basically.
yeah, if they don't have someone advising them in the right like market price.
Yeah, and I think that's true. You do have situations like that. Um, at the same time, you have clients, you have people that are coming here and they expect to pay $30,000 for an oceanfront property. So there's, you have to kind of meet in the middle.
There
Right, yeah, it's about sort of setting the expectation and kind of giving them a realistic ballpark of, okay, this
Yeah.
is about how much you should pay for this kind of property. I see. And then, yeah, go on, Chibera.
No, I often I talk to Lexi that in the end we're kind of like financial advisors for real estate investment here, because that's what it is, when you working with clients and you told them being honest and say like, because we also see like some people coming and say like, hey, this is the property that I want. This is like a cliff property that I want to build my house, my dream house. And I don't care if it's a little bit overpriced, but our responsibility is to tell clients, and then you decide, because real estate is about that, location, 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 right? And if you want to pay, there is a little bit overpricing, but you say, hey, it's okay. I'm happy with this. We see that too.
Back to the show in a moment. This show brought to you by CoinKites.com, the creators of the best Bitcoin hardware security devices such as the Cold Card Mark IV and the new Cold Card Q. Now, we use Bitcoin hardware security devices to keep our keys offline, our private keys offline. Now, the way these work is you can do that setup, write down your 12 or 24 words on the seed word cards, and keep that secure. Now, you can use this device to interact with the Bitcoin network using software such as Sparrow Wallet, Electrum, or Vector Desktop, or Nunchuck as a few examples. Now, you have a range of security features that you can use with these devices, such as passphrases, you can use seed XOR, or my favorite is multi-signature. Now, if you're starting in a basic way, just start with the device and the USB-C cable, plug it directly to the computer and use it that way, and then later improve your setup. But I believe these devices are great at helping secure your coins, especially as you start to migrate up into multi-signature security. But don't be disheartened or don't be scared away. They are accessible, and I think you actually do learn about Bitcoin in the process. So to get yours, go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get a discount on your cold card. The lead sponsor of this show is Bold, the best place to buy, sell, and save Bitcoin. For listeners in the US, Bold lets you secure your financial future with complete peace of mind by integrating a low-fee, Bitcoin-only brokerage with next-gen multi-sig vaults. With Bold, you can smash buy Bitcoin or set a DCA plan for only 0.99% fees and seamlessly deposit the Bitcoin direct to your Bold Vault. The Bold Vault is a 2 or 3 collaborative multi-sig where you hold 2 keys and Bold holds 1 as a redundant backup, protecting against loss or theft. You can use Trezor, Ledger, or Cold Card hardware wallets to spin up a Bold Vault in just a few minutes, and the Bold Vault is the only collaborative custody vault available with 0 monthly fees. They're also offering 0 fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Try Bold today and upgrade your stacking experience over at getbold.io. And now, back to the show. Yeah, okay. I'm also curious, I think listeners will be curious on this too. In terms of development level and service availability at the Western level, right? So let's say an American, a Canadian, an Australian, a British person. Where do you think, the development level is in terms of the Western expectation, and what kinds of areas, let's say, if you are coming with a higher expectation, what parts of El Salvador do people go for?
That's a good question. You can take it, Lexi, because it's also
Yeah, I
your
think
your story.
no, I mean, I think this is why Chimber and I make a really good team, to be honest, because he has a really great understanding of, what's happening in El Salvador and the changes over the years and the value of property. And I think I have a North American perspective as far as quality goes. And so I think that, it's definitely changing and it's getting better. But probably the pre-construction projects that we're seeing now are the highest quality. If you're looking for something that like already exists in the market, it might be an older home that needs renovation, and then you need to make sure that you're working with the right team. And you need to make sure that also the project is very properly managed so that you're getting, the even as far as like where does the light switch go in the room? You want the light switch to be when you walk in the room, right? So you can turn on the light. So those are, things that you need to make sure are being done in the correct way. But I think it's getting better. I think that we're seeing developers coming from other parts of the world outside of El Salvador, which is interesting because they can collaborate with Salvadorians here, and so you can get that quality that that a North American perspective would demand.
Yeah, I was also curious as well, that let's say cultural and social norms that a Westerner might have, or maybe around things like, as an example, noise, right? Like you might move into an area and then sort of not realize, oh, actually, there's kind of parties going on nearby, late night, that kind of. Maybe if you could explain a little bit on that as well, like just so that people have the right expectation there.
Yeah, there's I mean, if you're going to be moving to El Salvador, you need to understand the local culture here. That's one thing. And how do they do things here? And then how do you fit into that? And what adjustments do you need to make for you to be comfortable in this place? And, there's we have the veggie trucks here in El Zonte that are passing like multiple times a day. And so if you're going to be in the heart of El Zonte, you have to also understand that those things are normal. And so maybe it's going to be a little bit louder. You're going to have roosters in the morning or things, right? So those are expectations that we set with our clients. Like, here's the understanding of this area. Take it or leave it. But yeah, I think you make a really good point because the cultural differences, they exist, and for the better, I think. But you also just need to have a good understanding of what those things are when you move here. And over time, when you commit to living in El Salvador, for me it was a big adjustment. And it's changed a
Yeah.
lot since I first moved here. I moved here 5 years ago, and when I first came, it was much different than it is now.
Yeah.
But it
So
does
actually,
take.
Lexi, on that, I'm curious, like, what for you? What were some of the big adjustments? I mean, you're a Westerner, I presume. So, what were the big adjustments for you?
Yeah, I think one of the things, like I lived in New York City for 10 years before I moved to El Zonte. So it was
Right.
a
Yeah.
big difference living in the financial district in Manhattan to moving to this small surf town. I think one of the things is access. Like this is changing too, but like you don't necessarily have the access at your fingertips that you have in a place like Manhattan, right? Even for like shipments, like we don't easily get Amazon shipments, for example, or any shipments here in El Salvador. It's a bit of a challenge. So you have to, like, for me that was a little bit hard at first. Then I also realized a lot of the stuff that I thought I needed in a place like Manhattan, I didn't need. And that is refreshing. You're like, okay, I actually don't need that thing, and I don't need this thing, and I don't need that service. And I have instead, I can wake up with the sunrise. I go to bed with the sunset. So there's pros and cons. But yeah, that was, I think, one of the first things for me was just the adjustment of like, what do I have access to? And I think, like, yeah, like you said, some of the cultural differences, like how do people communicate here, um, making sure that you have patience for certain things. Like, for example, things can move a lot slower here. I think that people, business people who are coming to El Salvador to invest will understand that like lawyers can be slow and restaurant service can be slow, and so you kind of have to have patience for that. But yeah, those are some of the things.
Yeah, and look, in fairness, I think it's a good point to say that whenever you go to a country, if you come with like this kind of very high Western expectation, you might be disappointed, and so you sort of there's an adjustment period, and there's a period of you sort of have to learn to adjust a little bit to how locals live, to some extent, right?
Yeah, and I really think that coming to El Salvador requires an open mind. And if you have that, you're going to have a really wonderful experience here. That's how it was for me. Like, I noticed things when I first, some of the things I experienced were a little bit harder for me. For example, I'm coming from Manhattan, like super fast paced, your head is down, you're moving quickly from one place to the next, versus here in El Salvador, you're walking down the street and people expect that you'll just like stop on a whim and have a 15-minute conversation with them over coffee. And sometimes that's a hard adjustment when you're used to doing things very quickly. But then if you have an open mind and you are like open to these new experiences and ways of doing things, I think it can actually really shape you to be a better human in the end. So, it's a big deal moving to another country like El Salvador if you're coming from the US, but it can be a really, 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 really wonderful thing.
You know, Stefan, and I would love, maybe Lexi is the best person to explain this, but one of the, like, a lot of people thinking that countries like El Salvador are poor countries, right? That the level of life is like really poor, and until you come here and you see it yourself, is that a lot of people get, like, they're surprised, like, wow, the quality of life here. Yeah, it's more simple, but it's really rich, in many ways, right? And some of the questions that we have very often is, what about doctors? What about if I feel bad, the healthcare? What about food? I used to have like good food. What about, can I find good food in El Salvador? Like, clients ask like this, like question like, can I buy like really what everything that I find in the USA in Costco? So I would love that Lexi can touch a little bit about that, because that's what much of the people are asking.
Yeah, I think that's a question we get from a lot of people, rightfully so. The access to medical care or the school system, different things that Chimbera just mentioned. And the nice thing about El Salvador, and especially living on the coast in El Salvador, is that you're only an hour from San Salvador. So if you are a surfer, you want to be near the beach, you can still do that and have that lifestyle, but be very close to a city center with all of your basic needs, which is different than a place like Nicaragua or Costa Rica, where if you want to live in a surf town, you have to like fly into the main city, and then you have to, you have to drive 2 hours, and you have to take a small plane to another place. So here it's like you fly into San Salvador, you're an hour from the coast, you're an hour from the city. So yeah, the private healthcare system here, and I preface with private, but the private healthcare system here is phenomenal. Like, when I was living in the US, there's no way that you're going to be on a text message with your doctor, or get same day service if you need it. And here, for example, I can, I actually had a baby here in El Salvador, and I had my baby in a hospital here, and the experience was really wonderful. So, and when I needed an ultrasound the last minute, I could get it. Or if I had just a question and I was nervous about something, I could message my doctor and they would respond right away. So these are things that I didn't get in the United States. So in a lot of ways, El Salvador is just a better place,
Yeah.
for even healthcare services.
And I'm curious as well, because I think there'll be listeners who are curious. What's the English speaking level like? Or is it like you really need Spanish to properly integrate and get around and get by?
You don't need Spanish, but it's great to learn Spanish if you're going to move to El Salvador. I'm not fluent, like I can have basic conversations. I can have conversations and get by for sure with Spanish. But yeah, it's not necessary, especially with like a lot of the translation tools and things that we have now. But I think it's a part of the richness of the experience if you take on the language as well.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like Lexi say, when you're moving to a new country, I think is part of the culture. We have a good friend of us, Wayne. He moved from San Francisco. He purchased a property here in Sonte, and he didn't speak Spanish when he moved here. And now in the last year and a half, he had been like, I need to learn Spanish. And now he's like really like fluent in Spanish, and he's having a blast, talking to everyone. And he's like, you can see how the perspective change, because once you speak the language, like, you can connecting more with people, and that's is happening everywhere in around the world. It's like there are a lot of people that doesn't speak English, so it's hard. Even if they want to communicate, it's hard. But once you pass that barrier, you can have like meaningful conversations with everyone, and there is a big expat community that is just growing, but it's also a lot of people like that, but a lot of people it's good to have that mix, of expats, but also be with the reality, with the people from the country. And I really think like when you move to a country and you at least you try to learn the language, you show respect also for people, right? And people appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, Spanish is an interesting one as well because it's one of those, let's say, a lot of people around the world speak that, right? It's 500 million native Spanish speakers, maybe 600 once you include second language Spanish speakers. So it's kind of, you get a lot of bang for buck if you learn Spanish in that sense. So that's actually a useful thing. But yeah, interesting for people to know exactly how much they need to know to sort of get by. Let's chat a little bit on the prices and, real estate. I know obviously it's a big, it's really what exactly are you looking for? But if you could sort of give people a rough idea, like what kind of prices people might expect to pay for, an apartment or let's say a 2 or 3 bedroom house, if you could just give like a rough idea for people.
Lex, you
Yeah,
want to take
yeah, I
it?
can I can give you a rough idea of prices. For the pre-construction projects here in El Zonte um for some of those units, you're seeing like a two-bedroom unit for 445,000. Um, that's for a second line from the beach, like very, very close beach access. And in El Zonte, which we say is like the Malibu of El Salvador, right? So you see higher prices here. But we have oceanfront properties in different parts of El Salvador for $300,000. That's for a vacant lot. Sometimes you can find something with construction on it. If you're looking in the city in San Salvador, you're going to see prices between 250,000 and I mean, honestly, multi-million, depending on the type of home and the location in the gated community. So it's a mix, and the prices really depend very much on the exact location in El Salvador because it can vary dramatically from one town to the next in a matter of like 30 minutes from one place to another.
Gotcha. And yeah, and then maybe if you have any idea on like rental yields or rough for those who are interested in listening from like an investment perspective, what kind of like rental yields or capital appreciation, if you could sort of talk through what you've seen there.
Yeah, I don't have like concrete numbers to share because it kind of depends on the project as far as appreciation or what kind of rental income you're going to see. I think for like a two bedroom apartment in El Zonte right now, maybe you could get well, let's see. I can talk about Wave House. That's a new project that just closed. It's the first project of its kind, and that one is in El Zonte. It's 19 condominium units. And for a nightly rental, there for a studio, you're seeing around 350 a night. For the oceanfront units, you're seeing I think around 600 a night. So, um, that gives you an idea of in like a nicer luxury building what kind of rental income you can see.
This show brought to you by Mempool.space, the world's leading Bitcoin visualizer. And now they've got an accelerator program. So if you have a transaction that you sent at a fee that was too low to get confirmed, now you can fix this with the Mempool accelerator. The way it works, you can go and search your transaction, scroll down, click accelerator, and you don't need an account. You can pay with Lightning, and then it'll show you it's now in the process of being accelerated, and then after a few minutes, it's confirmed. And so this is a great way to help you out if you are stuck. And this can happen where maybe your wallet doesn't have RBF or CPFP, or it might help you in situations where it's impractical to go and re-sign. So for example, multi-sig with keys in different locations. And thirdly, even in some Lightning scenarios, perhaps a forced close, you might not be able to use RBF. And so in this case, the Mempool Accelerator can help you out. So keep it in mind, and you can find out more over at mempool.space/accelerator. And now, back to the show. Interesting, yeah. And I presume also, just because of a lot of people are bullish on El Salvador, I presume prices have probably run up a lot in recent years. What has that looked like?
Yeah, it definitely it's more expensive than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago. I always say like I feel that all of the appreciation that would have happened in a steady in a more secure place, over the years would be like it all happened at once in El Salvador, right? Like all of the appreciation happened kind of at once in a small amount of time. The country is safe. There's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of growth here. There's a lot of hope here, and so the prices match that kind of development, And so people say like, "Man, I should have, 5 years ago I could have got a, I could 5 years ago I could have got I could have got that property for X price." And it's like, yeah, but you didn't invest 5 years ago. And why was that? Because the country wasn't safe and it was a lot riskier. And so, I think you get the price that you come in at. Sort
Yeah.
of like
And I mean,
Bitcoin.
obviously, most people listening to this are Bitcoiners, so they're obviously going to be like trying to maximize the Bitcoin and only, maybe wait for a bull cycle to kind of buy a property, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm presuming that's going to be the mindset that, a lot of listeners are coming from. So they're probably thinking, okay, maybe during a bull cycle, take some and, buy a plan B or this kind of thing. That
we
might be something,
we
that might be
do
the way people are thinking.
we do have people that just start like getting familiar with the real estate market here in El Salvador, but they're really honest and they say like, I have like 4 Bitcoin ready to purchase a property in El Salvador, but I'm not doing now, like I'm waiting for, it's just everyone have that price level that everyone will be happy. But I think at 100,000 K per Bitcoin, we will see a lot of people, liquidating Bitcoin to buy their home or buy their land here in El Salvador, and I think once the price of Bitcoin goes up, we will start seeing more and more Bitcoiners um, buying, I think, real estate. And the fact is, Stefan, is that if you're a Bitcoiner, you don't want to buy real estate in many places. But what I'm seeing is that a lot of people want to buy it here in El Salvador, for what representing, right? So that's cool.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, that is a thing in different countries. You can't always get. Now, I've heard this explained as freehold versus leasehold, right? So in
Okay.
some countries you can get freehold, in others you can't, and you can only, as a foreigner, you can only buy the leasehold. And so this is an interesting aspect where, as you mentioned, you can own it, and it's 0% property tax, so you get to see the capital upside fully. So that's an interesting and attractive component to it. Of course, every Bitcoiner has to make that choice of, how much of what percent
Yeah.
of their stack are they willing to, carve
Yeah.
off and get a bit. At the same time, if it's a place that you want to live in or a place that, you want to raise your family, that's certainly something interesting. So yeah, I guess any other kind of let's chat a little bit on real estate trends. Right now, we were touching on some of this. I think Lexi, you were talking a little bit about how there's been a bit more. You said pre-construction, so I guess that's like equivalent of like off-plan, purchasing. Let's say. Do you see that trend? And let's say this I guess what you were getting at also is that the pre-construction properties and builds will be more modern and, let's say, have the correct electricity and water and sort of those aspects built more to the higher level standard, I presume, versus if you are buying something that was ready-made and it was completed 10 years ago. That's kind
Yeah.
of the idea you were getting at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's because I think the transformation that El Salvador is having in the last 5 years is so big, that to be honestly, we were not ready for this big real estate market, coming to El Salvador. So, and you see most of the houses on the beaches here were homes from people from San Salvador, from the capital that used to come on the weekends. So for them, it's not their main like home living where they spend every day. So most of these houses like don't have hot water. They're like in bad conditions. They just come to spend like a day, couple hours on the weekend. So and the other thing is that there is not enough inventory for everyone that is coming. I want a beachfront properties, and we used to joke about it that beachfront properties are like Bitcoin. No one is doing more. So so the pre-construction project are allowing people, that to have probably not a whole house, but to have an apartment ocean view, and that is what's happening now.
Yeah. I guess in terms of where things are going, where you see it going, I presume the as we were talking about, it seems like it's mostly an optimistic attitude around what's happening in the country in terms of the safety of the country, the development of the country. Do you see any other, I guess, trends around real estate and how it's going to, let's say, professionalize? Like, are there elements that will, let's say, copy over from the American real estate market?
I mean, I, I think so. I think if the market demands it, it will come. We don't have an escrow service right now in El Salvador. I think that will come. We don't have an MLS in El Salvador. It probably will come. Like these things as the market matures, as the clients demand it. I think that these types of services that you see in the U.S. and Canada will become more standard here.
And yeah, so we were chatting a little bit about some of the different areas, but it might be if you could sort of spell out what are some areas that you think are interesting for different expats, depending on what they want to see. If you could maybe spell out some of the areas.
I think it's definitely Sur City One. That is one of the projects that the government called. That is, if you never been here, but it goes like from La Libertad to Misata, including Bitcoin Beach, El Tunco, La Libertad. All these areas called Sur City One is one of the most, I would say, hottest real estate here now. Also, there is in the east is Sur City Two. There is another project that the government is launching. They're putting a lot of money into infrastructure, making the roads and everything. So we're seeing a lot of interest there. Also, La Union, Bitcoin City, the government is building like massive project in infrastructure, including like an airport, a new airport there, and that's where Bitcoin City will be. And a lot of people want to get into the real estate market there as well. And of course, the city, the San Salvador, the capital is, I will say, is or like for a lot of people, it makes sense. A lot of people prefer to buy maybe like a small apartment in the city because for business, like schools for kids, is like in San Salvador, you find everything you need, like US standard living, I will say, like, and then we start seeing like I mentioned it, like people that are coming in looking for more cooler areas of El Salvador. So we have clients interested in the mountains, on farms, we have like a lot of farmland and coffee farms, so we're seeing a mix of different things.
Yeah. And I noticed also from the site you have the discovery trips. I think you were touching on this at the start of the podcast. Do you want to just spell out a little bit about these discovery trips and what are some of the big takeaways people have after attending one?
Yeah, I can start with that, and then Shamir, you can add on. Yeah, we developed these trips as a response to what we were seeing from our clients. Like we had a lot of people that were interested in El Salvador, but not really ready to commit yet. And they needed to have a better understanding of the layout of the country and some of the systems we talked about, education system, health system, before they really decide how to invest their money. And we decided, to launch these to give people that first experience, that first step in El Salvador, so that they can feel more confident making decisions moving forward. The trips, they include, it's a 5-day, all immersive, all inclusive experience here in El Zonte. We have a really beautiful villa that we rent out, and we have professional workshops, real estate tours, networking with other people who have decided to move to El Salvador, sharing their experiences. It's we say it's not like a cheesy retreat, where we're throwing some kind of party. It's like we're really focused on business development, making sure that people have all of the tools and the resources they need to invest here.
Yeah, and very often when we're traveling for conference and Bitcoin conference, and like people approach to me and say, "Where I need to buy? I want to buy it now. What's the best property to buy?" I'm like, "Well, you first, you need to come to El Salvador first, like because." I think like once you come and you have a better understanding of what the country's doing, what the infrastructure is doing. If you want to live in the mountain, if you want to live in a gated community, if you want to live on the beach, there's so many things that can change, based on your need. That again, based on their need, and I we start talking about with Lexi like it's impossible that someone will buy real estate without being here, because the market is so different. And I think it will be like I want to add value. It's like kind of I feel the responsibility that if people will invest in money in our country, I want to make sure that they understanding what they're doing, like that they're like, like, wow, I understanding, I want to support this, I'm excited about this. Now I understand the quality of life, I understanding what I can do here. And for people that understand that value, because you can come your own and trying to, connecting with the right people, see how the construction working here, the construction is even different between here and the USA, and also this is a good point also. The house here, like if you're looking for a house, your house, it's representing something different. Here is warm all year round. We spend a lot of our time outside. So people come with this idea that in the US and Canada or Europe, you spend a lot of time inside of your house. So here, you spend much of your time outside of your house, so the perspective is also different. And I think it's important that people come and understanding that, like to El Salvador is the place where you can come and build your dream house, kind of that, and it's beautiful when you work with these families, these individuals that have this dream, and you start working with an architect and the idea, and then it come alive, and it's a dream, right? So yeah, that's beautiful.
It's a really good first step. It's just a very good first step for everybody who's been hearing about El Salvador, for everybody who's been listening to podcasts, even gone to conferences. It has a little bit of knowledge about what's happening here, excited about the government. Like, this is a very, very good first step. It will be fun, but it's also super informative. And then you can leave really understanding, like, yeah, I want a beachfront property, or yeah, I want to buy a hotel, or I could see myself, moving my business here. So that's the first step. And then from there, we really can put together a plan for you based on what you liked and what you didn't like from the experience.
Yeah. Now, one question I think a lot of people will have is, of course, I think I agree. It's a good idea to visit the country first and really get an idea of the different areas and what you could do. But the other, I guess, risk factor for a lot of people will be if they're buying, let's say, a pre-construction, off-plan kind of property. They really want to make sure the developer has a good reputation and that they can deliver, right? Because there's always going to be a bit more risk there compared to buying a property that's ready-made, turnkey. It's already there. I'm just buying that. Whereas if it's an off-plan sort of thing, maybe there's a bit more risk there. So do you have any thoughts on how to mitigate that? Is it a matter of finding good quality developers with a track record, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think like the developments that we've worked with have been with developers who do have a track record in El Salvador. They've developed projects before. That being said, there's definitely new developers who are trustworthy, right? But I think it's just you have to sort of do your due diligence. We do that with projects that we decide to work with and collaborate with, and clients can do that as well to make sure that they feel comfortable about making a decision like that.
Yeah, and also we're not gonna get involved in some projects that we don't believe, because it already happens. Like some people approach us to asking us for help, with the commercialization. But every time you get involved, it's also like you're putting that your face, that you trust that project, right? So I think it's also that, we personally we do our own due diligence with the projects that we want to get involved. Part of that is also why we're moving to develop too as well, because we want to be able also to control the whole like process, right? And this is a trust. It's a business that you need to trust. It's about trust, right? And I think, like Lexi say, like a lot of people that are coming now are people that are coming with the right mindset. You know, it's a great opportunity, but it's also they want to do the right thing, and that is it's amazing. It's not just like um, I'm coming, I'm gonna do a shitty project, and I'm gonna scam people. Like a lot of people, El Salvador is not the example that the government and the whole country is leading. You know, and everyone I think feel aligned with that, and also like they're coming and they're do a project like that. Uh, I think they will have like some pushback from from many people. But if you come with the right mindset and you want to build good projects, I think I like everyone will be willing to support, and helping you to do your project. You know what I mean?
Great. Okay. Well, look, I think it's really interesting. I'm personally bullish on El Salvador. I think it is a country on the up. And I'm looking forward to visiting in January. I'll be there in for the Plan B El Salvador conference. But yeah, listeners, you can check it out. Goodlifeelsalvador.com is the website to find Chimbera and Lexi's work. I'll put the links in the show notes as always. And yeah, Chimbera and Lexi, thank you for joining me today.
No,
Thank you. Thanks for having
thank you,
us.
Stefan. Thank you. Thank you
Great
for having us.
conversation.
Yeah, thank you.